Today's Dr. Daf Memvav Amar Aleph Erev Shabbos Parshas Kisisa. Just quickly to remind you what the Mishnah was all about. We're continuing to talk about the process of the Nazir completing his term. So then they would cook the carbon shlamim, and the kohen would take, in addition to the normal rites, he would also take the cooked foreleg from the ram. He would take also the two sets of matzahs that were made. He would take one matzah from each one. He would place it on the hand of the Nazir, and they would wave it back and forth. And only after that can the Nazir drink the wine. And only after that is the Nazir has completed his term, and everything is permitted again. Tracer explains this follows the opinion that you have to go through all the activities, all the requirements before you're permitted to drink wine. Rab Shimon says, no, you don't. As soon as you sprinkle the blood of any carbon, doesn't matter which carbon it is, as soon as you began the process and one carbon blood was sprung, you already have completed all the prohibitions of Nazir, which means you've completed you have now the right to drink wine and Matam and the Mason, but you have a mitzvah to bring the rest of the behemoths and all that, and you have a mitzvah to go ahead and take your haircut. But none of that prevents you from drinking wine. Says the Gemara, we learned in the Braisa, we can analyze the pasuk where it says that the kohen waves. You place the matzah on the hand of the Nazir, and they wave it together. And then it says, he places this on top of the breast, on top of the shank bones, and then it says, and afterwards, Nazir yain. So we take the pasuk literally, it sounds like only after you finish everything can the Nazir start drinking wine. Says the Gemara, the haircut, and then you go ahead. Those are words of Rabbi Eliezer. The Chachamim say no. Achar is ma'aseh chidi. Even after one activity, here is the pasuk talks about one activity, and it says achar. After you do any one of the activities, you bring one carbon. You're now already permitted to drink wine, and so on. You have a mitzvah to do the rest of the activities. Says the Gemara. I mean, you take the pasuk literally, it sounds more like Rabbi Eliezer. Achar means at the end. Why did Rabbanan say after you one carbon you brought, you sprinkle the blood is enough? Because here it says achar yishtahano. You have a special Gzer Shabbat. Here it says achar yishtahanazer yain, after the Nazir drinks wine. It says over there when he talks about taking the cooked foreleg, it says over there you place it on the hand of the Nazir to wave. And after his galchas, after he cut his hair, there we highlight one activity and we use the word acher. So we can make a gzer shava the two acher, just like acher, the second waving is talking about after type one activity. Acher is galchas nizr. Mahas macha ma'aseh chidi. This is one activity. So avkan acher ma'aseh chidi. So to the pasuk before it says acher yisha nazir. It's talking about only one activity. Says the Gemara, Ema, why don't we say adi ketavayu? Why don't we say that maybe you need both? Maybe it means after you bring all the kabbanas and after you take your haircut, it means then afterwards you can do your thing. What did Gzer Shabbat achieve? Without the Gzer Shabbat, if you read the pasuk normally, after he does the kabbanas and the haircut. So what do Gzer Shabbat come to teach you? And we know this is a Gzer Shabbat. As we look at Gzer Shabbat, that they were told a number of Gzer Shabbos, and this is one of the Gzer Shabbos. So it must be to teach you that. Even though Tais already asked, maybe he's coming to teach you that Achar teaches you that after you do the kabbanas and the Nazir, before you did the waving. That even though you didn't do the waving yet, that was without the Gzer Shabbat, I would have thought you have to wait till mamish every single activity, including the kohen waving the hand. Comes along, Achar says you don't have to do that after the waving, you can do before the waving. So it tells you for that we don't need Gzer Shabbat because as Gemara will soon describe it as shiur and mitzvah. It's a remnant of a mitzvah. So even though it's a noble thing to do, it's a good thing to do, it's not really part of the mitzvah. Says the Gemara, Rav comes along and makes the following comment. Tenufa benazir ma'akeves. This activity of tenufa, of waving by a nazir, is also critical, and it holds back the nazir from drinking wine and being metamil mason. Now, the question is, who is Rav saying this according to the Rabbanan or according to Rabbi Eliezer? Because according to the Rabbanan, we said before, you do one carbon is very sufficient. What do you mean you have to wait till after the waving? Unless he's saying according to Rabbi Eliezer, which is what the Gemara thinks now. Yeah, but is it ma'akif? The Rabbanan hold as soon as you spray the blood. Keep it neither of them is enough. So well, you tell me truth is ma'akiv. So L'chayr is according to Rabbi Lezer, who says that you need achamaisas kulam. So you would have thought that truth is not included. Rabbi says that truth is included. So now we're going to have two versions of the Gemara exactly how this works. Whether we agree with the Rabbi, we don't agree with Rabbi, says the Gemara. Amar Rab Tanufa the Nazir ma'akeves. That Tanufa by Nazir does hold back from drinking wine and being metamal masons. Who is he saying this according to? According to the Rabbanan said a haircut, which the Torah makes such a big deal about. That's what it is all about. Yet is not ma'akiv. Taglachas Rabbanan clearly say that taglachas haircut is not ma'akiv at all, and that's part of the Nazir himself, and the Torah focuses on the hair. Tanufa. That never is ma'akiv in any carbon. The boy, you have to tell me that according to you're going to tell me that according to them, truth is ma'akiv. Klepnisht. It doesn't make sense. It's extraneous to the Nazir. How can it be ma'akiv? Ella must be a little bit of a lesson. Rav is saying that according to Rabbi Lezer, that who says everything ma'akiv, I want to include trufa. Thinking about it, why not? He said after everything, isn't that the trufa part of everything? No. The Amar Rabbi Lezer achamaisa kulam. So Rabbi Lezer said after all activities, so trufa is an activity. That you know name. Mao they would have thought. Even the inyan kapara, shiyari mitzvahi. When it comes to kapara, those kabbanas that have to have a kapara, it says you have to have trufa. And the expression in the Gemara is, we'll see the Gemara in Zvachim, that if you have trufa and a carbon that requires like a kapara, requires waving, if he didn't do it, the expression is he will like keeper, but yet keeper. You're missing a critical activity, he didn't do trufa, but still. It's mechaper. In other words, it's not when it comes to a carbon kapara. It's not ma'akiv. Why by nazir should it be ma'akiv? Why would Abelazar say that Tanufa here is ma'akiv? That's what you would think. That's what Rav's chiddush is. That Tanufa is ma'akiv. And normally Shiyar Mitzvah is not ma'akiv. In fact, when Taisa talks about when you make the bracha for Lulav and Esrog, because we have a problem. On the one hand, you have to make a bracha prior to the mitzvah. On the other hand, once you pick up the Lulav, give the argument not for bay. So the Flama test and Sukkah Taisa gives 4 different ways of doing it. And the last way he says is, you did it right before you do Nanuyim. You already have the Lulav and Esrog in your hand, and you do it right before you do Nanuyim. Since Nanuyim is Shiyari mitzvah, so on the one hand, it's Oiva Lasiyosam. You're doing it before you completed the mitzvah, so you're making the bracha before you shake it. On the other hand, it's not a problem of making a bracha after mitzvah because both the mitzvahs are already done. This is only shiyari. But this is answering before the last answer in places because the first thing you have to say it's not part of the mitzvah at all. It's the mitzvah's over already. Shiyari mitzvah is that's it. You did 100% of the mitzvah. This is a beautiful thing, a hidur to take the lulu nesrig and shake it afterward. So the question is, how do we view shiyari mitzvah? And that's the shakataya in the Gemara right here, exactly like the answer in places there.
Was because
also do the winds, but you're right. But that's the reason. But is it still part of the mitzvah? Is it an extension of the mitzvah, or is it like the mitzvah is already over and now there's a hidur to make it exactly? And same question about shir by lulav and the shaking the lulav. So I would have thought that it's not part of the mitzvah at all. And therefore, when Abelazar says it's ma'akiv, this is not it. And the Kamashal, that it is ma'akiv, that it is still a continuation of the mitzvah. Even though, if you didn't do it, the mitzvah you're still mekayim. But as long as you're involved in the mitzvah, you're still continuing the mitzvah. Just like the famous Mabit says by Krishna, that the chiv of Krishna Ma'atayda is only b'hafta. But when you continue saying b'hoyin shema v'yema, they all become Ma'atayda. If you didn't say it, you still fulfill your mitzvah Ma'atayda. But if you're continuing it, it's continuing the mitzvah of the Taida. So same thing here. You don't have to do the shir mitzvah if you don't do the ma'akiv, but if you're continuing it, it's part of the mitzvah. That's the shakotay anymore here. How do we view shir mitzvah? Says the Gemara, we're not happy with this. Why? Says the Gemara, you tell me that shir mitzvah is ma'akiv by a nazir. But Tanya, we learned the pasuk says zois toiras hanazir. When it says toiras hanazir, is coming to say. It's encompassing. It's an umbrella. This covers a number of dinim, and they all have the same din. And what? This is what the Braisa says. Whether the person has hands in order to be able to do the tnufa, whether he does not have any hands to do the tnufa. In both cases, the din is the same. And right now we understand that what? That just like if you don't have hands, there's no trufa, so still he finishes with zero. No, but if you have no hands, it's not makif. So if you do have hands, it's not makif. What are you telling me that Tanufa's ma'akiv. See, the Braisa here, we're comparing having hands to not having hands. Just like not having hands, a choice you have, and therefore you're a Nazir, so you get out of the Nazir without waving. So too, if you have hands, so we see that's not ma'akiv. So the Gemara, you're telling me, you're trying to ask a kasha after the Braisa and telling me that shot in the Braisa is that what if you have hands, you compare it to not having hands, and therefore it's not ma'akiv. Tell me, shot in this following Braisa. It says in the following Braisa, Zois Toidas Nazir. Again, we're equating all different dinim of Nazir. Bein sheyesh leisar, whether you have hair on your head. Bein she'ein leisar, the person is bald, it has no hair on his head. So according to you, what would the pshat be? Then in both cases, it's not ma'akiv, right? Whether you have hair, just like if you have no hair, you can't shave. It's not ma'akiv. So too, the way you learn, you're taking the have, comparing it to the have not. So too, if you have hair, if you don't take a haircut, it's not ma'akiv. Now we just learned before it's machlekes Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Shimon. And remember, Rav is saying according to Rabbi Lezer. So the Gemara is hachinami l'ma'akiv. If you want to tell me that there's 3 different ways I'm shouting Gemara here, we're learning like Rashi. Hachinami l'ma'akiv. So too, it's not ma'akiv. So that's a question. What you're learning. But Tanya, we learned Nazir Mimoidet, a Nazir is bald. Beishamai says, Einoit tzarich lahavit tar al roshei. He uses the expression, you don't have to use a razor. So what's he trying to say? Not clear. Is he trying to say, don't waste your time using a razor because it's exactly, and therefore you'll never finish your Naziris? Or is he saying, don't bother? Because you have no hair, you have no chiyuv. Yeah, there's 2 ways to learn Pshat. We'll see in a minute. And Basil says, you have to go through the motions. You're not cutting any hair off. It says the pasuk. It says the pasuk. Before the 30 days, but after the 30 days, you just go through the motions.
It's interesting the pasuk uses the expression about tar over al roshi. It doesn't say
it says lo yavar al roshi. Tar lo yavar al roshi. Shouldn't go over your head. So, but afterwards, so we say it means a tar. The Amar Ravina says, Ravina came along and said, my ain't sorry. What does it mean when Beishamai says that you don't have to? Beishamai ain't sorry. Could ain't takana. Not ain't sorry. Don't worry about it. I'm not forget. It has no takana. So over here, we're saying here is that what? That you just said that Zois Toidas means we equate the haves to the have-nots, and it's not ma'akiv. Here we see clearly according to Beis Shammai that Einot Tzarech means that here is ma'akiv. What's to do with us?
What does that mean according to Beis Shammai that a old person can never take on the Zirus? Or he
should never take on the Zirus because he's stuck forever. You can never get out of it. Exactly. Hold Beis Hillel, yesh letakana. Because Beis Hillel, you have a takana. Go through the motions. The Hainu Daf. This learns Pshat like Apodos. We're leading to our question. Apodos said Beis Shammai v'Rabbi Lezer v'Rabbi Echad. Now he said Beis Shammai. Now Beis Shammai clearly says that here is ma'akiv. The Braisa that says Zois Toidas then, therefore saying that if you have no hair, according to Beis Shammai, it's ma'akiv, and therefore that if you do have hair. And forget, we're not comparing having here to not having here. We're comparing not having here to having here. Because remember, according to Rabbi Lezer, if you have here, the mitzvah of giluach is ma'akiv. If you don't give yourself a haircut, you cannot start drinking wine. And Beis Shammai agrees with Rabbi Lezer. That means we're when the Braisa says not having here and having here the same thing, according to Beis Shammai and Rabbi Lezer, not having here is compared to having here, which means that what? That it is ma'akiv. It is ma'akiv. So we go back to the Braisa that says not having hands and having hands. You thought we're comparing having hands to not having hands. Forget. We're comparing not having hands to having hands. And therefore, what? It is ma'akiv. It is ma'akiv. My Rabbi Tanya, what does Rabbi Lezer say? He talks about a mitzvah. A mitzvah says if, let's say, you have to put the oil on the right toe and the right thumb, whatever, you don't have a right toe and a right thumb. That's it. It's ma'akiv. So Rabbi Lezer and Beis Shammai are saying the same thing. So therefore, they both learn the Braisa the same thing. That not having here is like having here. Rabbi Shimon disagreed. He said a place where the thumb should have been. Put it on the stub or whatever you have there. And the Chacham say you can't use your right hand. Put it on the left hand. So here we have a right. So forget. So now it supports Rav. So it is ma'akiv, which is exactly what Rav said. That Tunufa is ma'akiv. So we have a Braisa that supports Rav. We just learned the way Rashi learns Tosfos here. Problem in Tosfos here is that so many Yerusayos in the words of Tosfos, if you look at every single person decides to have his input. One guy puts out the word no, one guy puts in the word no. It is confusing as they come. Okay, that's one lesson. Another way of learning Pshat. Amri said. Rav said, what? That the same thing, the Tnufa is ma'akeves, but here the Gemara's discussion is that it's not according to Rabbi Lezer. The Chiddush of Rav is even according to Chachamim. You must leave the man. He lame with the pit. What are you down for? Since Rabbi says after all activities, truth is an activity. So of course Rabbi holds that's ma'akiv. I don't need Rav to come along and tell us what the Talmud already says. Ella Eliba the Rabbanon. Must be that Rav's chiddush is that even though the Rabbanon say that what haircut and all that is not ma'akiv, but truth is, hash. Just I don't understand. Hash the yishlema taglachas. Ami Rabbanon ma'akiv. The Rabbanon hold. So according to this version, it's Rav is saying according to the Rabbanon. Says you want to understand. The Rabbanon hold that haircut, which is so essential to the whole thing of Naziris, is not ma'akiv. In order to drink wine and go to the cemetery, Tanukva the boy, you got to tell me that waving. You can tell me that waving is ma'akiv. What's the logic in that? Said why not? Truthful, we see clearly from a brayse that it is ma'akiv, and l'chayre even according to Chachamim. Like Rav says, because what Tanya we learned, in this version, we Gemara thinks right now we're comparing not having hands to having hands, and it goes as follows: not having hands, l'chayre, is a given. It's all the way around. The Gemara says comparing having hands to not having hands, and not having hands is a given that it is ma'akiv. Why? Because we learned before Rab Zayda said a rule that bila eina ma'akeves, stir the carbon mincha is if you don't stir it, there's no big deal. But you cannot use a pot that's larger than 60 esrainim because it's not possible to mix. Gemara has, but who cares if you mix? You don't mix. If you have 61 esrainim, who cares if you don't stir it? You don't stir it. It's not ma'akiv. Kol ha'ro'ul bila. If you can stir it, then ain't bila ma'akeves boy. Then it doesn't matter whether you stir it, you don't stir. But ain't ro'ul. If it's not ro'ul, then biliyama keves boy. Exactly. So this person who has no hands, even though let's say you would think that waving is not important, but this person who has no hands, it's impossible to wave. So for him, it's possible. So when the Brisa comes along and says that whether you have hands, or you don't have hands, what the Brisa is trying to say is that it is ma'akiv because we're comparing having hands and not having hands. So we see that's ma'akiv. You go to Chachamim. So you want to know. You can't have shot because a lot of time we learn. According to you, whether it has hair, not having hair. According to you, not having hair definitely is ma'akiv, right? Because if you don't have hair, you know, even if you hold that it's not important. But if you don't have hair, you can't take hair because then it's ma'akiv. And the Brais is comparing having hair to not having hair, which means that having hair is also ma'akiv. Is hachinami ma'akiv. What Tanya we learned. And in this way, we can learn from Basil. We learn, or Bisham as well. We'll see. For time, we learn Nazir was bald. Bisham says, "Ain't it tzaddik will have it talarosh." You don't have to. And this time, we're going to learn pshat. You don't have to because it's not important. Having, if you don't have hair, you don't have hair. Basil, I mean tzaddik, you do need to. Oh, but Avina might tell Basil. Tzaddik, any of the kind of Basil says that what tzaddik can have no takana, but the Bisham yes, like takana or plugira podas. So according to Bisham, there is a takana. That means that the fact that you cannot have a haircut is not ma'akiv at all. You know, you can't, you don't have. So therefore, the way you learned the Brayse before that it's ma'akiv going to chamim is not. There's no raya for it because we clearly can see that even though you don't have a hair, Bishama says it's not a problem. That and
according to these last shita that
we have a problem with Rav. Where's your basis? I guess so. Yeah. This way, this version definitely. So this is what you call kula b'sham. B'sham says you can never.
Not a problem.
Yeah. Okay. So therefore, yeah. Yeah, you're right. So kula b'sham. But this way, Rav no longer has a brayse to support his big chiddush that even though Chacham holds that nothing's ma'akiv, one carbon is enough. But hanafa, tenufa, that is ma'akiv. That chiddush we have no basis for. Mishnah. Okay, what happens?
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
Really, let's say someone's totally bald.
Yes.
Can he really say honestly that he wants to become a Nazir? It means it's 30 days, his hair will grow and he'll have to cut it. But we know that's not going to happen. So can you say really someone who's totally bald cannot become a Nazir because they can't complete the whole activity?
No, they could be we had a concept that you'd be a Nazir the rest of your life. So but him assuming a Nazir is as if he's saying, I'm happy to be a Nazir the rest of my life. And in fact, I'm sure that's going to be the opening, the Pesach. If you would have realized the halacha is that you never take a haircut, he could have said, I thought 30 days like anybody else. If I have no hair, I have no hair. So that would be his opening to get out of it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, no problem. Here we have an interesting shayla. What happens? We said after one carbon, you can take a haircut, everything's good. What happens? You can then drink wine and then you have to bring all three kabbanas. What happens? You took your spray, you did your one carbon, and you gave yourself a haircut, and before you did the other kabbalah, suddenly you found out that the animal that they shechted turned out to be possible or became possible. It became tamei, or that it walked out, or somehow somebody took it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So it comes out that first animal that you took a haircut was possible. What do you do now? Do you just continue with the other kabbanas, or since you not only the first animal you brought, it's as if you took a haircut before you took any kabbanas, and everyone holds, yeah, you have to start all over again. Or please get a haircut here worth 30 days. What happens there? So think about it. So you finished your 30 days, you completed your whole term, and now you bring your kabbanas. So you brought one carbon, and the Chacham say after one carbon you can go ahead and take a haircut. You did. The name's a puzzle, and somehow also it became puzzle. Is taglachti psula. Your taglachas turned out you took a haircut when you shouldn't have. You took a haircut before you brought a carbon, even though you went through the motion of bringing a carbon. It turned out to be puzzle. So all along as if you never brought a carbon. And the carbon you brought is not valid. Not valid. What about gilach alachatas? Here's an example. What do you mean? Let's say you brought carbon chatas, and you took a haircut. It turned out to be that the kohen we brought the carbon chatas didn't have in mind that this is the chatas. He had or didn't have in mind. Have you in mind? Now we learned the first mission is vachim. When it comes to a shlamim or an oila, those kabbanas, if you didn't have the right things in mind, still a valid carbon, and it can be eaten, consumed, anything else, but you didn't fulfill your obligation. You got to bring another one. But if you take a chatas and you do it shaloi l'shmai, then it's a possible carbon. Nobody can eat from it, and that's what happened here. So you took a haircut after the shech to the carbon. Turned out to be that the carbon was possible. The achakach heavy kabbalah one. Then you had two other animals set aside. So let's say the chatas was no good, but you had an oil and a shlamim. So you continued to bring them up. It's so bad now that not only your haircut, as if you took a haircut before you brought in a kabbalah, not everyone agrees it's no good. And the two remaining kabbanas you shouldn't have brought, because once you took a haircut before your kabbanas, you have to grow back again another 30 days. So any other kabbalah you brought was useless. So therefore you did not, you have not fulfilled your mitzvah at all, and you have to do it again and bring 3 more animals. What happens? Okay, that was a chatas, because a chatas shalei l'shma is possible. What happens the first carbon you brought to the shlamim? And we had an opinion before that you could bring shlamim first. You brought the first, even though the pasuk says shlamim last. The first carbon you brought to the shlamim. Now the Mishnah there in Zvachin said by a shlamim, if he did it, not having in mind the balabas, the carbon is a valid carbon, and the kohenim can eat from it, or you can eat from it, but you didn't fulfill your obligation. So what happens by Nazir? The first carbon you brought to the shlamim, and the kohen didn't have you in mind. Didn't have in mind the name of the carbon. So the carbon itself is good, but you haven't fulfilled your obligation. The achikach heavy. So and you took a haircut after you brought that shlamim. And so what happens here? You would say maybe it's all right then, because the carbon is still a valid carbon, even though you have not fulfilled your obligation, but a carbon it is. How do we treat that? The achikach heavy kabbanos. The rest of the kabbanos you brought correctly. Even though the chiddush here is that even though the carbon is a valid carbon, but since you have not fulfilled your obligation, you took a haircut before you brought any carbonas. Shimon says, Shimon says is much more lenient. He says that carbon taka you haven't fulfilled your mitzvah, you got to do it again. But on the other hand, you cannot say you took a haircut before you brought any carbonas. So the rest of the carbonas you brought are valid carbonas. You just got to bring it again. You just got to bring again that the animal that you brought first. And therefore your haircut was also kosher, because the fact is you brought it after a carbon. So he's very lenient. I will see later how he knows that. What happens if you brought all animals up and then you took a haircut? Turned out to be 2 of them were treif, 2 of them were possible, became time, whatever it is. As long as one of them is still kosher. Because the Chacham hold, remember we learned before that if you sprinkle the blood of one kosher carbon, you have to bring the balance. So the mother wants to know, how does Shimon know that if you brought a shlamim that wasn't even turned out to be that you weren't to your obligation, that's good enough? How does he know that? We learn Shimon holds, if you brought up a shlamim, even the dava, you brought up a carbon shlamim, a voluntary carbon, nothing to do with nazir, and then you took a haircut, it's all right. How does he know that? My time, what's his reason? Because I'm a crow. The pasuk says, "The nasan ala eish." You should place the hair on the fire. Ashetachas zevach hashlamim. Doesn't say shlamav. Zevach hashlamim. As long as it's a shlamim. Yeah. The cost of our shlamav on his shlamim. Okay, let's do the next Mishnah. What happens? They sprinkled the blood on you, and right, and then afterwards, after they sprinkled the blood on you, you became tummy. So what happens here? So Rabbi Lezer says, so he says, you got to start again. Now, Rabbi Lezer holds it. We're talking about here the last day, Yom Maloya. So Rabbi Lezer, all we do is go back 7 days, the days of Tumah. I remember in 7 days your hair can go back, to its. You take the tip of the hair and go back to its root, and that's choshev enough to take a haircut. And so he says, so means the 7 days. We'll see later means that you have to bring all the kabbanos again. And the Chachamim say, Yov Shar Kabbanos B'Yitar. The Chachamim say that no, it's good enough. You bring the other kabbanos and you become tired. Well, according to Chachamim, if you brought one carbon, you already finished in the zeros, everything is all right. So here you brought your one carbon correctly, and afterwards you became tamid. So you bring it kabbanos when you can, but meanwhile you're no longer a nazir. You don't have to worry about repeating it. But Rabbi Lezer holds acha mais and pulan, right? Rabbi Lezer holds you still nazir until you conduct all your activities. So, but he says you have to do 7 more days, and that's it. They told him, what are you talking about? There's a woman called Miriam from the city of Talmud. They want to sprinkle on her blood from an animal. They told her, Albita, that your daughter Shaisim is a Kenneth, is mamash on a deathbed, on a death throes. She went to say the last words. And she found, unfortunately, that her daughter just died. But said she already brought one carbon up. But as far as this is concerned, she's already finished because what she did. So the Gemara says, you cancel, you have to bring all the kabbanos again. Remember, because he says that you don't finish the zero until you finish all 3 kabbanos. Rabbi says, sounds like you have to start the whole zeros again. Rabbi Lezer says last time that if it's the last day, if you finish in the zeros and then you become time, whatever it is, all it is, you have to repeat the 7 days. In other words, get pure again. Tummy mace, become pure. My sois and what says sois means sois kabbanos. You got to bring kabbanos again. That's what it means. Makes sense. It says the say tovi shar kabbanos, but it's the say that you should bring the rest of your kabbanos. So all we're discussing here is kabbanos. We're not talking about the nose and stuff. Nobody says you have to repeat the nesiris here. But according to Rabbi Lezer, since the hair has to be after the kabbanos, and now you became okay. It is the last day. It's not during the nesiris, the final day. So Rabbi Lezer says that you have to bring the kabbanos again. You have to bring all the 3 kabbanos again because it says achar. Afterwards, you have to do all the thing, and and you became tummy in between. You have to bring all the kabbanos. Exactly. Shema mino. I'll bring another proof. One of the brothers praying her. Can't hold the sick. So we're talking about Shema mino. Rashi says over here that the kabbanos that he set aside, he has to do it all over again. And the Mefarshim will try to understand what is that all about. The kabbanos he set aside, what to do it all over again for? It's just funny yet. You haven't done it yet. It became tummy after he did one carbon. The other kabbanos you set aside for the other Islamim. Why do you have to bring other kabbanos to replace them? Why can't you use them for the later? Anyway, you can have 100 and a good shot.